play. It's time to play. It's business pants time.
All right, just for context, I asked my co-host Damian Rollis, who just hey'd everybody, whether or not he was going to be energetic at the top of the show today, because he was a sleepy mess yesterday. That was energy. You brought I'm feeling up now.
Yeah. I am ready. I have energy. It is a glorious Tuesday here in the snowy and wonderful Portland, Maine. Everything is good. What's going on, Matt Moscardi?
You know, kids are home because it's like an ice storm, and
It's not a storm. I'm guessing
it was pretty weak. It was pretty weak, but the kids are home today, so I might have one of those BBC moments where they run in and they're like, "Daddy, I pooped my pants," but just that's what business pants are full of. So it would just be in keeping with our show.
All right, well, put your kids' ears to the speakers because I'm going to tell them the agenda.
Nice segue.
Today, because there's not a lot going on, we got a bunch of still a things in our new fan favorite segment, Still a Thing. We got a nice fat decade list for Matt to talk about. This time we're talking about Wall Street, and then Matt's gonna make a game, right, Matt?
Yeah, I'm gonna play a little game today. I feel like we don't play enough games.
All right, let's go.
I mean, everything is kind of a joke anyway.
No, true.
All right, let's
Jokes.
go. Let's go.
Right.
Enough talking.
Do it. The harp sounds great today, by the way. Really booming.
I did nothing for it. Yeah.
So it's a slow business day. How do I know this? CNN Business is featuring a story called "Dawn Says You're Washing Your Dishes Wrong." No, really, I'm dead serious.
That's top of the fold today.
Here's the spoiler. I briefly glanced at the articles. I saw spray, rinse, and wipe, and I immediately felt self-conscious. That's the spoiler. And also, I don't use Dawn, so leave me the F alone, CNN. Okay, so instead, we're gonna do some important updates in our new and beautiful Still a Thing segment, which coincidentally is not sponsored by Dawn. So
Dawn,
sorry,
not a thing.
No, I just lost some sponsorship money there. Sorry, man.
Great. It was pouring in before that.
All right, 4 stories. Feel free to interject your wisdom after each story.
I'll go find some wisdom first.
They're a bit longish, so it'll give you some time to rest. Okay, ready?
Do it.
Let's start with Boeing.
I love Boeing.
The New York Times is calling Boeing's decision to suspend production of its most popular plane, the 737 MAX, the culmination of the worst crisis in the company's 103 years. The plane has been grounded since 2 crashes killed nearly 350 people within 5 months, and its return to service remains uncertain. The company's reputation and stock price have been battered, with shares falling 25% since March. Boeing has announced more than $8 billion in charges related to the crisis, and more are expected. The production halt will affect hundreds of suppliers around the U.S. and is expected to be felt across the economy because Boeing is the country's largest manufacturing exporter. And here's a quote from an economist in the Wall Street Journal. "It would be hard to have any other single company stop the production of a single product and have it hit the economy as hard as this would." So that's Boeing for you, Matt.
So the Still a Thing is Dennis Muhlenberg, right?
Yep, still has a job, still throughout all this.
So
what is the board waiting for?
Well, here's the amazing economic capture, because the FAA came out and they said, and the board had to convene. We touched on this yesterday. The board had to do an emergency meeting because the FAA said they weren't allowed to put the 737 Maxes back into production, and they were estimating it wouldn't be until like next year, like early next year, maybe springtime, because they had a list of things that they had to comply with and answer before they could do that. So I don't know exactly if Dennis is looking at that list because he didn't know anything about the 737 Max. So presumably someone else is dealing with that list, and or everything going on at Boeing. But Boeing is so large, there's only two major airline manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus. There's basically no competition in the entire world for airline manufacturing. Boeing is so large that now the FAA, consumers, the U.S. government has to choose, is it okay that they fast-tracked a product that killed hundreds of people and we keep them going because because the economy needs it, or should we ground the planes and kill the economy? Isn't this the definition of too big to fail? Isn't this like it's the same thing as the banks in 2008, right? We're going to hit bailout territory.
Well, I guess you're explaining well why he maybe still has a job, right? It's what are they going to do?
Well, the only surviving CEO from the 2008 banking crisis is Jamie Dimon, which suggests to me that Dennis Muhlenberg does not have long to be the CEO of Boeing, and B, that this thing is not going to end soon or well, right? Like I can't imagine like if we've hit a company that's too big to fail, that means that it actually adds a layer of like enhanced interest for me for the antitrust action around Google and Facebook and the tech companies, because this is kind of what happens when you let a company monopolize an economy. This is what it looks like. It looks like a crash, no accountability, and no way to stop the company.
Right. And as we pointed out here, the board appears to be filled with Muhlenberg cronies, which is not doing the company or the country any good, really, right? I mean, they're keeping him at work.
Ed Liddy, we're talking to you.
So Travis Kalanick, Uber co-founder and infamous big tech creep, has unloaded another $350 million more of stock this month, so still a thing there, bringing his proceeds to more than $2.1 billion since an Uber share lockup ended November 6th. So I wanted to just give you a flashback to who Travis is. This is from Recode. Here's an article from 2013 talking about the infamous Miami letter titled Urgent, read this now or else, in which Travis also noted, you better read this or I'll kick your ass. And he also noted that Miami's transportation sucks ass. So that's the kind of guy, that's the kind of CEO Travis was. The email included some do's and don'ts. Among the do's, have a great fucking time. Among the don'ts, information about everything from vomiting, a $200 puke charge, to drug use, to throwing beer kegs off buildings, and then how to have sex with other employees. So here's what Travis said. This is the CEO. Do not have sex with another employee unless A, you have asked that person for that privilege and they have responded with an emphatic yes, I will have sex with you. And B, the two or more of you do not work in the same chain of command. Yes, that means that Travis will be celibate on this trip. Hashtag CEO life, hashtag fuck my life. So that's Travis. That's CEO. This is Mr. $2.1 billion. This is Travis.
I think we look at visionaries like Steve Jobs and say that's what CEOs are supposed to be like, these trailblazing, amazing geniuses. I think we in this country need to in the U.S. and capitalism need to rethink what a CEO should be, because Adam Newman made $1.7 billion and Travis Kalanick is over $2 billion.
Yeah.
And they made successful crash and burn companies while making billion. This is the American dream. So I would like to slow clap Travis for living the American dream.
It's like they failed up. They're like snake oil salesmen failed upwards geniuses.
Fantastic.
I don't know what the hell. All right, the Sucklers. Remember the Sucklers?
Yeah, Purdue.
Yeah, Purdue Pharma, the Sackler family, but come on, really, they're the Sucklers. So let's reset the stage. In August, the maker of OxyContin, the Purdue Pharma, and its owners, the Sackler family, offered to settle more than 2,000 lawsuits against the company for about $10 billion, including $3 billion of the Suckler family's money. That agreement was rejected. A new report hints at why. The Suckler family has transferred $10.4 billion out of Purdue Pharma since 2008, directing it into offshore trusts and holding companies. Good for you, Sucklers. This is the same family that bought a Palm Beach mansion for $7.4 million in October, right before the company filed for bankruptcy. So.
It's old white Adam Newman. That's what this is. So congratulations, guys.
Finally, Facebook back in the news as the Wall Street Journal reports that billionaire investor, Trump lover, Facebook director Peter Thiel pushed Zuck not to fact-check political ads. Also, Thiel has reportedly bumped heads with other Facebook directors over his conservative political views. As a reminder, Facebook's board is currently in flux with Netflix CEO Reed Hastings and former White House Chief of Staff Erskine Bowles. Both will be leaving the board at the end of the current term. And in October, Dr. Susan Desmond-Hellmann, the board's lead independent director, ostensibly the strongest singular counterbalance to Zuck, and the CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, stepped down. So that's the state of the board over there at Facebook.
Facebook board, still a thing.
All right, still a thing. All right, let's jump out of there. But let's.
I front run you with the harp.
I'm gonna make it a mission to keep my eye on that board because people need to talk about that board.
Honestly, it's the cushiest job in the world, isn't it? Fake Public Board is I did when I did like Get Mad on a Board, the series a couple weeks ago, which if you haven't heard, you should go check it out because it was fun to do. I should have just targeted fake public companies. What a job.
You know, I wasn't gonna cover this because we ran out of time here, but now I want to add it. When Dr. Susan Desmond-Hellmann stepped down from the board, here's what Zuck had to say. Sue has been a wonderful and thoughtful voice on the board for 6 years. Doesn't that smell a little bit like calling a black director well-spoken? Doesn't that? I mean, that's what he said. She has been a wonderful and thoughtful voice. And here's what Dr. Susan had to say in her letter to Zuck about her stepping down. That she remains positive about Facebook and the mission to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together.
Remains positive?
Yeah, doesn't that sound like she doesn't? Doesn't that sound like the exact opposite? All right, that's. I know that's. I'm doing opinions there, but I thought I'd throw that. All right, let's get out of there.
Let's get back into the tens.
All right, okay. The decade. Another list for Matt because I like when Matt does these lists because it shows off his what he thinks is his brilliance. So here we go. And Matt, you're gonna have to help me with some of this because some of these I'm too stupid to understand. So I like when you opine and teach. So here we go. The biggest developments on Wall Street in the 2010s. You ready for it?
Yeah.
And this is in no particular order. I'm just gonna go through them. Here we go. Number 1, flash crash of 2010.
Ooh, the fat finger trade. That's what they thought it was.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So effectively, they call it a fat finger trade when somebody adds like an extra zero at the or few zeros at the end of like a block that they're trying to trade, and it causes what they think happened is someone basically enters an extra zero or two, and it causes algorithmic trading to look at that and say there's a big sell-off, and then all the computers, because the market is actually, most of the trades in the market that you see today are actually computers and algorithms. So the market actually all sort of simultaneously just started selling off. I think it lasted like 22 minutes. And then And then all these circuit breakers trip, and then the market went back to normal. But people lost like billions of dollars instantaneously before it went back to normal.
So that's gonna still be a thing, right? That's not going away.
It's going to get worse. Are you kidding? When AI is trading, then who's going to be able to unwind a trade? Who's going to be able to say, oh, well, they traded this way? Like the AI is just going to be like, I trade how I feel.
I got 25 of these, Matt. So you might want to help me.
We might have to just do the highlights.
Longest bull market in history.
That's what we're in.
Debt ceiling crisis of 2011.
Yeah, that's the cliff.
The banking industry bounces back.
See, here's the thing about all of these.
Yeah.
They're not 2010s things. They're just things.
Like cyclical things?
Yeah, I mean, debt ceiling crisis is a political crisis, right? Where if you remember, the Republican House or Senate, I can't remember now, but basically held hostage the debt, the U.S. debt ceiling. And you're staring at the cliff, and it causes panic in trading. But any sociopolitical event will cause panic in trading in markets, because markets prefer certainty to uncertainty. I mean, right. I like that. That's a typical trope of market speak. Raise your hand if you like uncertainty much more. Like, does anybody go out and they're like, man, I love it when I'm not sure if I'm going to die today or get stabbed or maybe, like nobody says
those are the choices.
Yeah. That's it. That's all your choices.
Okay. Facebook's IPO. Here's one for you. Here's one for you. The rise of passive investing.
This is a debate. Okay. So for those who don't know what passive investing is, which I assume is a lot of you, passive investing is just investing in an index. You buy a basket of stocks, you sit on it, you don't care. You just let it do whatever it does. But there's an argument being made that when you buy a basket of stocks and you don't care, and enough people do that nobody sets the price in the market anymore, because the price is supposed to be set by incredibly smart people who are valuing companies. Now, we can argue whether or not those people are very smart, but, passive investing is going to be a bigger thing going forward, because no one wants to pay fees and no one knows what they're doing unless you're listening to Business Pants.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of which, falling fees, another big story. Quantitative easing. What's that one all about?
It's when the Fed pumps money. It effectively buys securities to pump, money into. It's boring, but it's a big deal because it can change the dynamics of interest rates and market participants. It also allows banks to sell off crap that they might want to sell off and get cash for it and do what they want.
Number 9, social media. Number 10, big tech monopolies. It was like basically tech that drove this whole bull market, wasn't it?
I think that's the big story of the 10s, and that's the one that won't repeat, because I think tech is actually going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? I think tech is.
No, I think
we're at the end of
right.
the tech
I think
run.
You're absolutely right. What I wonder is what will happen will something come along to replace the surge, or will the market actually slump? That's why. Yeah, but I think you're right. Tech is in trouble. Oil prices collapse. Number 12, ESG investing.
Yeah, see, in pre-production I said, that's probably close to number 1. It's like the Full Employment Act for asset management.
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't know this is what I don't know. I don't know if it's because I do this news every day and I'm constantly looking for stories. But I feel like there's been so many more ESG stories, ESG investing, socially responsible investing stories like popping into my feed, right? Is it because I'm looking for it, or
there was some estimate that a third of the total assets under management globally is ESG, environmental, social governance. It's now uses some ESG data or method.
Right.
So when it gets to a point where it's that large and it's that mainstream, but people start to pay attention to it, you start to see ESG sucks articles, and you start to see ESG is the future articles. The fact is, it's totally linked to passive investing, one of the earlier ones, right? If nobody wants to pay for a basket of stocks that's just the stock market, then the only way an asset manager can differentiate themselves is to say, well, we use this new ESG stuff that you can't really get passive and cheap. That's why it's so valuable. It's like
All right, well,
saving
yeah.
asset management.
Well, we're going to talk more about this tomorrow as we go inside the pants. So we're going to talk about this new idea of oversight into these ESG funds from the SEC. So moving on, major legislative changes. That's every decade. Global interest rate pressures. That's probably happens all the time. Cryptocurrency. We don't talk about that as much as we used to.
We should. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's confusing. But it's important. I mean, we did talk about it with regards to Facebook's Libra, but we haven't in a little while. So, fintech, robo advisors, dual class shares.
That's I think we've hit peak dual class.
Yeah,
there's a prediction for you.
A lot. Venture capital funding. That's obviously not going to go away. Bond market rally, which I don't care about. Yield curve inversion, which is obviously fascinating to everyone in the world. The trade wars. China's devalued currency, Brexit, and then finally cannabis legislation.
This is just a list of everything that ever happened.
I know. Maybe not the greatest list, but it got you talking. That's why I come up with these lists, Matt. It gets you to.
I think all of those things are still things, with the exception of dual class. I think we're at peak dual class.
There you go. See, we can't pre-produce everything because then you know what your take's going to be. These lists are good because it just makes you say stuff.
It says you. Remember, we're not talking to just each other when we're doing this. Nobody wants to hear, a moron ramble.
No, but you're an established expert in your field, an executive director at your previous job. I mean, I think the world needs to hear you.
Everyone's an executive director,
except for. I'm not going to say who. All right. Let's get out of here. We were over time. Let's get to Matt Makes. Matt's going to make a game for us.
Let's make something.
Make a game.
So in the back of yesterday, and we talked about this actually early on when we launched Business Pants, we talked about board names because there was a PwC report. So today I want to make a game with boards. Well, we talked about this PwC report that said nearly half of directors say that one or more directors on their board should be replaced. Right? This was a high watermark for their survey. They survey these board members, and apparently anonymously they're willing to say, yeah, there's at least one jackass on my board. We took a guess yesterday at who the board members that they were thinking of. And we largely landed on the fact that if your average board member is a white guy named John who's 61 years old, it's probably the younger female who has no business in the smoking room.
Yeah. If you squint, it's basically a version of the Leon Cooperman versus Elizabeth Warren fight.
Yes. You
squint.
I will squint hard.
Okay.
But I wanted to pull out a second finding from this report. I think I'm going to slow play trolling through this report. It came out in October. It's super fun because one of the other findings in this report was, quote, directors push pause on diversity. The percentage of directors in the survey who responded that diversity was very important went from 46%. Gender diversity was very important. Went from 46% in 2018 to 38% in 2019. And racial and ethnic diversity went from 34% to 26%. Now, first of all, I can't really address the fact that only 34% of board members think racial and ethnic diversity is important.
Well, what's the context? Does it mean important for what?
For the makeup of the board, like when hiring a new board member, that these are important factors.
That's right, because their take would be that we're all living in a meritocracy, and of course we'll just hire the quote unquote best candidate.
I can't. You know what? I can't. I don't have enough time in the day to explain how
Well, you have about
fucked up
4.5
that
minutes.
is.
Yeah, no, it's depressing. It's depressing.
But I wanted
And
to go through.
And this is an anonymous reaction, right?
This is
I mean,
anonymous.
so,
this is
yeah.
why I like it so much, because it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
their names aren't attached to it. But I wanted to go through a little bit of context. Well, as diversity falls off of boards' interest, let's recap what boards look like today. There are 22,400 U.S. board members of publicly traded companies, about 22,000 people on boards, okay? Or I should say 22,000 board slots, because a lot of them are actually similar people. I don't know exactly how many people that is. That's board slots, available slots to be taken. There are, yesterday, I had a number of just over 3,000 women on boards. The number is actually 5,000 when you include executives who are also on the board. Okay. So of all the board slots, there are about 5,000 women on U.S. boards. Now, if you're just doing quick math, I mean, in your head, that's about 22%. Okay. So 1 in 5-ish, 4-ish board members is a woman.
Right. So it's about the same percent of board members who think that racial and ethnic diversity is still important.
That's right. So
I'm guessing it's the women.
This is why they've hit quota. That's why they don't think it's important anymore.
Yeah.
They've quoted it out. Now, I won't mention the fact that 50% of the population is women, and that actually there are more educated women in the population than there are men. None of that matters when it comes to a U.S. board, because, fun fact, and you brought this up yesterday, but I wanted to actually see what the real numbers were. Men name the top 7 named men.
Yeah.
The top name is John, with over 900 board members named John. John, Michael, Robert, David, James, William, Thomas. Those 7 names.
Right.
If you have
7 horsemen,
one of those 7 names, there are as many people, men with those 7 names, as there are all women on U.S. boards.
Right.
Okay?
That's great.
This is why diversity isn't important, because really all you need is 7 dudes with the same name.
Yeah.
That makes up all women. Now, I wanted to gut check this, and I did this before, but I wanted to do it again. I wanted to gut check this against what is actually the prevalence in the U.S. population, because it's unfair to say that, John shouldn't be the number 1 board member if John is the number 1 name in the country. And it is, in fact, the number 1 name in the country. The prevalence of guys named John or James, or basically all of these names, they're the top male names in the country. Roughly just over 3.25% of boys are named John, James, John, Robert. Michael's about 2.5%. William, David, and then the women's names, when you get to the top woman board member name, is Mary, and it is also by far the most prevalent female name in the country. There's 2.5% of women are named Mary. Mm-hmm. So boards, do they look a lot? It sounds like they look a lot like, reality, like what the U.S. population is. Well, sort of, because there's actually there's actually a big skew in these people's names relative to the U.S. population. In fact, there are 1.6 times more Johns on boards than you'd expect based on the U.S. population. And ironically, if you're a woman named Mary, there's 1.4 times more of you. What it made me think is boards aren't about diversity. They want everyone to be exactly the same with the same names that they've always known. They're doubling down on people who all look and act exactly the same. If your name is John, you're 1.6 times more likely to get a board seat just because your name is John, because that's what people are comfortable with. It's not meritocracy. It's your name.
Johnocracy? Yeah, okay.
So I wanted to, and to prove it wasn't meritocracy, I went and I actually downloaded all Harvard MBAs in the last 10 years by name. And it turns out
do that.
John is underrepresented relative to the U.S. population for Harvard MBAs. There are
Oh,
less
okay.
Johns that are Harvard MBAs than there are in the U.S. population.
Well, I don't think they don't need to be. They don't need to get MBAs.
They don't.
They don't need qualifications.
You know what else they don't need? To be smart at all. Because when I look at the sheet of all directors in the United States and I pull out the keywords for PhD, doctor, Nobel laureate, professor, MBA,
Uh-huh.
the smartest name is Andrea. If your name is Andrea and you're listening to this, please get in touch with us because you're probably significantly smarter
Really?
than any
Interesting.
board member in the U.S.
I actually do know a couple of smart Andrews. Okay.
40% of people named Andrea on a U.S. board
Wow.
have like an MBA, are Nobel laureates, or doctors, or something. There's something amazing. Contrast that to John, where John makes up almost 5.5% of board member names, but only 15% of them are actually tagged as super smart.
Hmm.
So here's the thing. If you are a 61-year-old white guy named John,
Yep.
you are almost guaranteed a board seat simply because you're a 61-year-old white guy named John.
Does feel that way, doesn't it?
We're over today,
Thanks,
but
man.
that felt good.
Yeah. No, that's. I feel troubled by that last statistic.
As you probably should.
I feel troubled by most of the statistics that we cover on the show. So I guess it's nothing
Honestly,
new.
this is like the most dystopic show.
No.
possibly be.
This is just what's going on.
So tomorrow's ESG Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll dive deeper on some of these ESG issues. Yeah.
And today was Tuesday. That was Damian Rollis. I'm Matt Moscardi. This was Business Pants. Thanks to our amazing team here at Free Float Media who produces this, gets the art together, gets the pre-production together, gets us dressed, gives us coffee, and watches our children.
Okay. I wasn't listening, but I'm going to agree with you. Take care, everybody.
Damian, I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening. Bye.